Welcome to the workshop. We're about 5 minutes away from getting started. So if you're already logged on, take a moment, let us know the name of your church and your city. And if you have other team members who aren't here yet, go ahead, take a moment and text them, call them, let them know to jump on. I promise you that what you're going to learn in this workshop is going to help you move some steps forward. So I'm going to take these last 5 minutes and continue in some personal prayer time because I'm praying for you. I'm praying for your church. So if you would, go ahead, take a moment, make sure that you let the other people on your team know to go ahead and jump on the call. Click this link. It's not too late. Even if they didn't register yet, let them know to jump on. We did register just at about 95% capacity. So they may still be able to make it in, but just go ahead and share the link and have them jump in with us. All right, we've got about 5 more minutes and we're going to jump in and get started. All right, family, welcome to the workshop. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet, let me take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Henry, and I'm the owner and founder of Simple Systems Consulting. And I'm super, super excited to have you here. For those who are joining, I'm still going to be watching I'm going to be watching the comments. I'm going to be watching the chat from time to time. If you have some feedback, you drop it in that chat, and we'll throw it on screen, and we'll make sure that we allow your voice to be heard. I am super, super, super excited about sharing this time with you this evening. Now, I know that there are two different kinds of people on this call, and I want to minister to both. One type of person on this call are some of you who I am currently working with, and some of you that I'm currently working with. You're currently doing some of the things that we teach. You're working through our church systems boot camp, and if that's you, I want to give you a shout out. So if you're a part of the boot camp, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and maybe even just drop one of your favorite things about the boot camp so far, just so I can recognize you and recognize who you are. I already see some people from Love City in the house. I think I saw Pastor Rush in the house. I saw one more person. I saw some people from Faith Church LA in the house. All churches that we're already working with. So just drop in the chat just your favorite thing about the boot camp so far, just to let people know who you are. The other type of person here who is somebody you maybe never heard of me, we've never worked before, or maybe you've been getting emails and text messages, or you saw us on social media, whatever it is, we welcome you all, and we're excited to get plugged in with you. All right, now you're looking at me right now, but I'm gonna go ahead and let you know for the rest of this webinar, I'm gonna enlarge that screen, and so you won't see me. You'll hear my voice, but you may not see me for the totality of the workshop. But I'm telling you, it's going to be a game changer if you lock in. All right, now I do want to stay on screen for this next little part, because I really want to stress something to you. All right, in the next 90 minutes, I'm going to show you. All right, you're going to learn how church systems can really help you and your church see some healthy growth. All right, and we're going to be talking about this in the context of revitalization and relaunching. All right. Many of you are in that place. You're in a place where your church needs revitalization, right? When I think about revitalization, I think about the picture of a heartbeat, and I think about trying to add new life back into a heart. You want to bring something back to life. And so, if that's where you and your church are, we're going to help you do that. And some of you are in the place of relaunching, where you're saying, okay, man, we really need to take a new stab at this thing and relaunch our church and give ourselves a new introduction to the community. Wherever you fall in there, these next 90 minutes are going to be monumental in order for us to help you take those steps. So I really want to encourage you to lock in. All right. For those of you who are here for the first time, don't forget, if you stay to the end, I'm going to give you a free gift. I'm going to give you a free church system. All right. I'm going to give you a church system that's going to help you better organize yourself, your life, your time, your energy, so that you're prepared to lead a growing church. Growing churches are led by growing leaders. And so if you want to be the leader of a growing church, then you need to start living today like your church is 10 times the size that it is. And I'm going to show you how to begin to do that, so that the moment God sends your harvest, the mom and pop or the crab in a bucket syndrome won't start pulling you back. I'm going to give you a system that's going to show you exactly how to begin to do that, but you can only get it if you stay to the end. So make sure that you stay to the end and that you lock in to what we're going to be doing. All right. I want to ask you to do something for me. All right. I need you to put away all of the distractions right now. Don't scroll on Facebook. Don't be playing on your phone, watching TV in the background. I'm telling you, it's just 90 minutes. And if you lock in, this could be the answer to your prayers. This could be the thing that you've been praying for, the thing that you've been asking for, but you've got to lock into it. All right. So you've got to lock in and pay attention. And I see some of you giving some feedback, man. So excited to have y'all. Super excited. Let me see who was the first one to give their mission statement. Looks like it might have been Bishop Williams. I think it was Bishop Williams, a church that stands on prayer and enrichment of the body of church to further the kingdom assignments of the Great Commission. All right. Thank you, Bishop Williams. I'll reach out to you after the webinar and make sure I get you your Starbucks gift card. All right. Starbucks on me. All right. So listen, put away every distraction and lock in to what's about to happen, because this could absolutely be the answer to your prayers. And if they haven't jumped on already, if there are team members from your church, if there are leaders, if you're a pastor, other people are not on this call, go ahead and text it to them right now so they can jump on. because the only way you're going to be able to get this is when you get it live. Okay. So let me take a moment and introduce myself. My name is Henry Tolbert. I've been married to my wife, Latoya, for 16 amazing years. And together, we are the parents of four daughters, ranging from an upcoming senior to an upcoming kindergartner. And they are all girls. So, yeah, just go ahead and put me on your prayer list and pray for me, because you know what you can only imagine what it's like, and how exciting my life is, to be a father to four girls and a husband to an amazing wife. All right. I'm a former athlete. A huge part of my life has been football. I played football, started playing football at 9 years old. Played in high school. I went to college at Grambling State University, which is where Latoya and I met. We were both college athletes. She played softball and basketball. I played football, and that's where we started our life. And so much of my journey was shaped by that experience, that HBCU experience, but also that experience of being an athlete. I was pretty good, had a chance to be an All-American there at Grambling, and even went on to bounce around professionally for a couple of years. Never made the final NFL roster, but I did get a chance to go and go to camp with several NFL teams. Fun fact: in college, I have actually scored touchdowns in four NFL stadiums. All right. Random fact, has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but I thought it was something fun that I would just throw out there. All right. I'm also the founder of Simple Systems Consulting. And with Simple Systems, we work with pastors and church leaders to help them grow the church without burning themselves out and without using complicated marketing. And that simply means we want to help you grow the church, but not at the expense of your life and your family, and now also not at the expense of compromising the truth. We want you to stand on the truth of who you are, of what God has called you to do, and so we help you do that. All right. Overall, I've got about 20 plus years of ministry experience. I started pretty early. I wasn't a pastor's kid, but my uncle was the pastor. My aunts and uncles were the deacons and deaconess and trustees, and my grandfather was a bishop. So it was a huge part of my life. And so I started really early, even to the point when I left my home church after I graduated high school. I went directly into, well, within a year or two, serving in ministry, in college ministry, and started college ministry when I was about 19, 20, and just continued the journey from there. And here I am. Here I am. All right. So super, super fun. All right. Somebody asked what position I play. All right, great question. So all throughout high school, I was a running back. From little league all the way to high school, I was a running back. And when I got to Grambling State University, we had a quarterback who turned out to be one of the most prolific quarterbacks in NCAA history. My junior year, he threw 57 touchdowns. And so after my freshman year, starting at running back for Grambling, I realized the direction that our offense was going. And so I moved to wide receiver. And lo and behold, it turned out to be the best fit. And so I spent the very, very large part of my career as a wide receiver. So great question. All right. Through Simple Systems, to this point, we've been able to partner with more than 100 pastors. We have several partners. We have worked with several denominations, some that you've heard of, some that you may have not. We have worked with the National Baptist Convention of America Incorporated under the leadership of Dr. Samuel C. Talbert. We've even had an opportunity to run a major project for All Nations Worship Assembly underneath the leadership of Apostle Matthew Stevenson, and some other groups that we have been a part of and been able to serve as well. As a matter of fact, we've got a new group that we may be getting ready to serve really soon. And maybe you'll hear some more about that in the future. Can't talk about it just yet, but that's a part of who I am, right? And I give you all of this because I want you to know where my passion and my heart comes from. My heart comes from serving the kingdom, serving the church. And if you're on this call, you're a part of that, right? And so I want you to lock in. If you don't already, grab your notebook and a pencil, or grab you something to take notes with, because I'm going to give you a lot, but it's going to be insanely practical. And I'm telling you, if you never hear my voice again, if you take what I'm about to give you on this call and you go and you actually wrestle through it and you put it into practice and you allow the Holy Spirit to work through this information, I'm telling you, it's going to be transformational for you. All right. So we're going to be talking about unleashing revitalization. All right. And so as we get ready to get into that, I want you to stop for a moment. I want you to think about something. All right. If you're sitting somewhere stationary and you can, I want you to just take a moment and just indulge me for a second and just close your eyes. And I want you to picture something. I want you to imagine for a second how different would your life be if your church was able to add 50 new people? What would that mean for you personally as a leader? What would it mean for you to have new volunteers who could help you do what God has called you to do? What would it mean for you to be able to spend your time focusing on leading and not just doing tasks? Imagine what it would be like if you had 50 new people and each of those person on average added about $1,000 a year to your budget. So imagine how different your budget would be if you had an extra $50,000 to the budget. I want you to imagine for a second how different your life would be with 50 new people. Would you be able to go away on a vacation without worrying about how the church is running while you're away? Like, what does that mean for you? Because I know it means something different for everybody. But I want you to imagine what it would be like if you could add 50 new people to your church. All right. Somebody, really quickly, for a moment, what would be the biggest change for you personally if your church added 50 new people? Drop it in the chat real quick. All right. What would be the one biggest thing? And you can answer in one word, a few words, whatever it is. What would be the one biggest change, one biggest transformation for you if your church could add 50 new people? Somebody dropped it in there. I want to highlight a couple of responses from some people who have a great imagination. I'm talking to kingdom visionaries on this call. And so as a kingdom visionary, I know that it's not hard for you to imagine. Look at that. I love what he said. He says, I can do real apostolic work international. That's good, Pastor Samuel. Man, I love that. I love that. Pastor Samuel, one of my favorites up there in New York. I could do real apostolic work. Man, there's nothing like having the freedom to be who you were really called to be. To be who you were really called to be, because many of us fall into the space of doing what we have to do, not just what we're called to do. Look at this. Pastor Lynch said, I could be less hands-on. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes being in the mud and being down at the bottom of the mountain cost us our ability to go and spend time on the top of the mountain, right? Come on, somebody call Moses real quick. Look at this. Bishop Williams said our community enrichment program will be birthed. So now you can actually go out and make a big difference doing ministry because you're not just focused on what's happening in the room. All right. So what I'm hearing and what I'm understanding is that it would make a huge difference if 50 people were added to the church. That would make a huge difference. And so let's talk for a moment about why churches are facing decline, because all across our country, we've seen all these different churches facing decline. And I want to dig down into it just a little bit. Look at what Pastor Russ said. He said, I could focus on what I am truly called to do: cast better vision, develop future leaders. Man, that is so huge. And I can tell Pastor Rush has been working with me because he is already jumping into what we're going to talk about today. He's already diving into it. Look at this. I would have a chance to evangelize in the community and not feel like I have to do everything and be everywhere. Come on, I know that feeling of just being overwhelmed. Man, I remember several years ago, it's been about 10 years ago now. I remember waking up one Sunday morning, sitting on the edge of my bed, crying profusely, and not being able to answer my wife and tell her why. I was literally having some kind of breakdown because I was overwhelmed. Our church grew so fast. We went from a service with, 50 to 75 people in it to running 3 full services every weekend. And because I had not yet discovered the power of systems, it was wearing me out and it almost cost me more than I was willing to pay. All right. So let's talk about this. Why is the church facing decline? Why is the church facing decline? Well, a couple of things. Number one, this is just some foundational things I want you to know. The first thing you need to know is every church decreases by 10% every year on average. All right, I need you to grab that. Every church loses 10% of their congregation on average every year, right? Well, why does that happen? It's a whole bunch of different reasons. Some people pass away. Some people move away. Some people get a new job and their schedule changes. People go through divorce. People go through all kind of life. Some people are just disgruntled. But if you average it out, what's normal is about a 10% decline. Now, there are some places, if you have an older congregation, then that number is elevated for you. If you have a congregation that is filled with people who are 50 to 60 and above, then that number is going to increase. But on average, every church loses 10%. I'm talking about even the good ones, even the blessed ones, 10% will go out. All right. And this is what becomes a benchmark for growth. Because if you just add 10% a year, that will just keep you leveled. That will keep you where you are. That will put you in the place we call stagnant. To get into the place of growth, the percentage of people that you add has to be greater than the percentage of people that you lose, right? So one of the reasons churches are declining is because churches are losing 10% every year without fail. Another reason that churches are declining is because of the post-pandemic faith crisis. All right, church leaders, y'all saw this during the pandemic revealed to us that some of the people who thought they were spiritually strong weren't as strong as they thought they were. I wonder if I can get an amen in the chat on that one. Some of the people who really thought they were spiritually strong, we later discovered that they were not as strong as they thought they were. They started having these crises of faith the moment that they could be in church every Sunday, the moment that we couldn't be there to keep them in line, the moment we couldn't be there to tell them what to do and how to go. We saw a lot of people fall away. And so what has happened is that there's been almost a reset when it comes to discipleship, when it comes to people walking in their faith. And so one of the things that we've got to do is that we've got to understand that there are some people, even some that we have depended on in the past, because I think this is where it hurt most, is that I would maybe expect a faith crisis from somebody who was just a pew member. But we saw this happen in leaders. We saw this happen in the people who were sitting around the table with us. They got a chance that they got so comfortable watching service on the screen at home that we've been struggling to get them to come back, right? We've been struggling to get those people to step back in. So that's been a huge deal. All right. So that's another reason that churches are declining. Another reason is the financial recession. You know, our economy is in shambles right now. Our economy is at a tough spot. And I say that prospectively, it depends on where you sit. If you're a person who is not an action taker, then this economy is horrible for you. But if you're a person who sees opportunity in this economy, is great. It reminds me of 2008. I remember in 2008, man, we lost a whole lot of stuff. And I declare even then that when this came around again, because recessions are cyclical, that when it came around again, I'd be ready for it. And one of the things that I've learned to see this time around is that the recession is a time where most people are going to take a step back and do nothing. And so for those people who are willing to be action takers, it's a chance to go forward, right? And so you've got to understand that that's a part of where we are right now. And then here's a final reason another reason that I think churches are declining is that people are so focused on enjoyment. Man, I remember a time where people used to plan their vacation around what the Lord was doing in the church. And now, man, people just, if they decide they want to go out of town, they get up and go. It doesn't matter what they're responsible for. It doesn't matter what their roles are. None of that stuff matters, right? We can no longer assume that people prioritize the work of the kingdom. And so these are challenges that we're facing. And so what we're going to figure out today is how do we get on the other side of it? All right. And so if you're taking notes, and I hope all of you are, here is the one thing that I want you to grab. I need you to get this. This is the statement that's going to set the foundation for everything else we talk about. If you can grab a hold of this statement, it will absolutely change your ministry. Like, here's that moment. You've been praying for that moment. You've been praying for the next step. You've been praying for God to do something. Here is the moment. I'm giving you the statement that could change everything. The secret to successful church revitalization is understanding what's causing your stagnation. I'm going to say it again. The secret to successful church revitalization is understanding what's causing your stagnation. You cannot solve a problem that you do not know exists. One of the things that I have seen over the past several years that hurts most churches is they don't know what problem they're trying to solve. They don't know what problem they're trying to solve. And so the secret is understanding what's causing the stagnation. Let's take that statement a step further. And I want you to understand a part of how I think about church growth. Church growth is not something we make happen, but we can stop it from happening. I want us to get this, right? Because I never promise people that my job is to come in and I'm going to force their church to grow. That's really not the approach I take. The approach I take is actually the opposite, because I think the opposite is true. I do think that it's true that the Lord will add to the church. I also think it's true that the Lord always wants to add to the church. I think it's true that he wants to see people come to salvation and come to redemption in him. I do think that's true. But I also think it's true that we can put barriers in the way that block that from happening. And so if you want to know how to move the church forward, it's figuring out, how are you standing in God's way? How are we standing in the way of what God is trying to do? And it can be so many different things. And I'm going to talk about this later. But I was reminded of the scripture. I want to say it's John 6:66, but I can't remember. But I reminded of the scripture where it says that Jesus, talking referencing Jesus, says, but he could not do many miracles there because of their unbelief. Right? It was literally the fact that they could not. Somebody tell me in the chat what passage is that? Because I may be quoting that wrong. But it literally says that it was their inability to believe in the one God sent that kept them from going forward. Like, so there were literally people there who could have been healed, but they weren't, because the people couldn't believe. And so what you've got to figure out is what's blocking the church from growing. All right. So let's dive into that a little bit. All right. I want to dive into three secrets I'm going to share with you. And I'm going to break down each one. But three secrets. I just gave you the big thing. Now I'm going to give you these three things that you need to grab, that you can wrestle with, that I'm going to help you wrestle with on this call. All right. Matthew 13:58. Thank you, Pastor Samuel. And here's one of the things. Maybe John 6 is the one, because there was one that was about people deserting him. I think that may have been what I was thinking about, where Jesus said, eat my flesh, drink my blood, and they walked away from him or something like that. But thank you for quoting that. All right. But I'm going to give you three secrets. And these three secrets, if you take them and you wrestle with them, I'm telling you, we're going to go forward, and we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, I want you to grab them, because I'm going to give you an opportunity to share those questions. And maybe even some of you, if you would like to come on screen and ask them, we'll be able to dialogue a little bit. All right. So let's talk about these three things. First secret number one, your greatest barriers are often connected to past success. Your greatest barriers are often connected to past success. All right. If you are a leader and you've been leading for any amount of time, three things are probably true about you. One of three things are probably true about you. Number one, you have led an organization or a church through some success. That's probably true of you. Most of you, you've probably had a season of ministry and a season of life where you have seen what God promised you fully come to pass. And that's a beautiful thing. The second thing that's probably true about you, if the first one is not, is that you have been a part of a church or an organization where you've experienced success, where you've been close up and personal with that success. You've got a chance to be a part of it. You've got a chance to be on a team, whatever it may be. And if none of those two things are true, the third thing that is true is that from where you are, you've seen success. You've looked over at another church. You've looked over at something that some other leader was doing, and you saw success, right? For a long time, I was in that category. As a matter of fact, I remember several years ago, I went through a period for about a year where I unfollowed every pastor friend I had on social media, because I got tired of going to church on Sunday, having the most awful experience in some cases. And I'm just being honest. And I hope this is a place I can be honest. I'm talking about having one of those experiences where nothing seemed to be organized. Stuff didn't seem to go right. I didn't know who was going to show up, who was going to be in the room. And having those experiences only to get on social media and to see all of my friends talk about, oh man, didn't God move today? And I'm like, well, look, he moving with y'all. Why he ain't moving over here? And I got so frustrated because I was seeing their success. And here's the truth of the matter: whether you led success, you were a part of success, or you've just seen success, some of the greatest barriers that you face are connected to those successes of the past. All right. So let's dive into that a little bit. A couple of things that go into that. All right. And here is how past success can cause stagnation. One way it causes stagnation is that it leads us into a lack of vision or purpose. Maybe our past success because of what we've been a part of, and we saw the mission statement and we saw the purpose statement, we saw what the church was doing. Sometimes success causes us to try to copy what we saw in one place or in one season to bring over into a new season. And that doesn't always work. You can't just copy the purpose of the past to bring into the present because it doesn't always fit. Just ask David. David won a great victory under the Lord's guidance. And then after that victory, he had enough wisdom to say, shall I go up this way again? And the Lord says to him, no, the way that worked last time is not going to work this time. So I need you to go a different way. And sometimes we are stuck in stagnation because we do not have a vision or purpose that fits the moment, the time, and the season that we are in. This is where we got to be like the sons of Issachar. We've got to understand the times and the seasons. It's not just enough to understand what to do or what we've done once. We've got to understand what to do in the season that we're in. So that's one major cause of stagnation, is a lack of vision or purpose, or a vision or purpose that doesn't fit our time. Like we've got to do this. We'll talk more about this in a little bit. Number two, another thing that causes stagnation in the church is resistance to change. All right. Now, I'm talking to everybody on this call. I'm going to step on everybody's toes evenly because a resistance to change can come from the pulpit and it can come from the pews. But a resistance to change is a cause of stagnation. What we have to understand is whether we change or not, the world around us is changing. Right? And I'm not talking about changing your core values, changing what you believe in. I'm talking about changing your methods, not your message, but your methods. A resistance to change is a cause for stagnation. There are so many leaders in so many churches that are stuck. Look at that. I like that. Karen said it's tight, but it's right. Come on, somebody. Tight, but it's right. All right. Listen, there are so many leaders in churches that are stuck because they're resistant to change. Change does not have to be bad. I think sometimes when we hear the word change, we assume that we're losing something good. And for all of my leaders on the call, I think I ought to give you this because I believe it's a blessing. Whenever we talk about change, people think about what they gain second and what they will lose first. I'm going to say it again. Whenever we as leaders talk about change, people think about what they're going to get second, but the first thing they think about is what they're going to lose. And so when you talk about change, you've got to understand that. But resistance to change is one of the greatest causes of stagnation. Can I be honest with y'all? I'm going to tell y'all what makes me, I'm going to tell you the number one reason that I don't make a great pastor. And I'm bearing my soul with this. I'm going to just be honest. I'm impatient. I am impatient. I just am. When God shows me something and I see it and I can have a conversation with you and know you see it, I struggle to connect with the fear that makes people deny what God has made clear to us because we're concerned about how we'll be personally affected. I don't connect well with that. And that makes me struggle as a pastor. It just does. I'm impatient. When God shows us a way, and he shows us a way out, he shows us a way forward, he shows us a way to help people, I believe we ought to pursue it. And I understand people are people, but I'm not one of those people who's good with watching other people struggle for the sake of a few people's comfort. All right. So that's how we gotta do it. Look at this. I love this. He said, Pastor Edward said, you can't lead from a place of fear. My Lord, today. That's it. All right. Let's keep going. Number three. Number three. Look at that. He said, sounds like a different fivefold grace we were talking about. Listen, come on, somebody. Look, that's me. That's why I shifted. I had to move into what God was saying. All right. Here's the third thing. The third thing, another major cause of stagnation is disconnection with your new community. Disconnection with your new community. If you have been leading for, I'm gonna say, 10 years or more in the same area, especially, your community is different than when you started. I would even argue if you've been leading for 5 years, the community you're in is not the same as the community that you started with. It is said that now in this information age, we produce literally more information every year and every month than we did in all of history combined. Like, think about that. We produce more information than any other time in history. Stuff is speeding up. Stuff is speeding up and it's changing fast. And many of you are in communities where grandma has now left the house to the grandkids. And so grandma that you used to connect with, grandma that used to have a sense of community, grandma that grew up in a place where you can go knock on a neighbor's door and ask for a cup of sugar, that grandma is no longer there. And she left her house to children who didn't have to pay for it. And because they didn't have to pay for it, they don't value it the same. They don't care about it the same. And some of them just have different values. Even if they're good people, they just have different values. And so as a result, the mission that your church had towards the community in one season has to be different in this next season because you're reaching a completely different group of people. And so one of the things that's causing stagnation is that you're disconnected with your new community. All right. Now, let me give you the other side of this. The other side of this disconnection with your new community is that you have not embraced your digital community. There are people whose ears have been tuned to your voice and they live across the country. But if you are not embracing technology, they have no way to connect with you. And so you're missing out on your new community. Communities are virtual now. You've got your community that is geographical right around your church, which is still a huge opportunity because you can do deep life with those people. But also the rest of the world has adjusted to doing life with one another in the digital space. There are more students going to college online than any other time in history. More people do their banking online than any other time in history. More people work from home online than any other time in history. And the church is one of the final institutions that is still being resistant to taking advantage of this new community. And it's a cause for stagnation. Is that if we are unwilling to connect with the new community, we miss out on what God is trying to do and wants to do. We've got to make sure that we see the value of the digital community. Look at this. I love what Pastor Cole said. He says, it takes divine patience. Man, listen, that's a word and a half. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I teach on the fivefold, one of the things I teach is that when God calls you and he gives you the gift of the pastor from that fivefold, he gives you the capacity to love people at a level that they cannot return. It calls for a deep divine patience. It calls for it. So that's so good. Look at this, Pastor Samuel. I love this. He said, our faith community is primarily digital. That's true. It's primarily digital. We've got to understand that the digital community is an opportunity for us. All right. Number 4, another reason, and I told y'all I was coming for it today. Another major cause of stagnation is neglected leadership development. Neglected leadership development. When times were good in the church, We settled for letting people do ministry without training them to be a ministry. And because we settled for letting people do ministry, we didn't develop their ability to be a ministry. Now that we need them, they are not ready. We don't have enough people who are ready. I don't know if you guys had this encounter, but I had an encounter with a couple of Hebrew Israelites not long ago. And man, that was a moment that broke my heart. Several years ago when I was on staff at a church, and I was serving, and there was this young man who wanted to be mentored. And so I started working with him. I started mentoring him. And I was helping walk him through his purpose and through his calling. And I was trying to help him. And in the context where we were, the church just didn't have a lot of opportunities. We were trying to develop them, but we were fighting against that resistance to change, right? And so this young man, I was working with him. I was helping him. He was coming along. He was open. He was available. But the church was so stuck in its traditional that it just wouldn't come forward. All right. And so fast forward, maybe 2 years later, I went on Facebook, and there was this post going viral from this Hebrew Israelite talking about how shallow and how fake the church is. And it was this exact same young man. It was this young man. And when I went on his page and I just started scrolling through his page and just looking at his journey, what I discovered is that they had radicalized him because they leaned into his desire for development. They told him he was a leader. They told him he was God's man. They told him that he was the chosen one, that he was the chosen from the chosen tribe and the chosen nation and all the stuff that they teach. And it touched something in him. And while we are not necessarily at a threat to lose all of our people to other groups and factions and cults like that, I think there's a lesson to be learned that people not only need to be trained, but people want to be trained. People want to be trained. Most people want to be great at something. And if you can give them a blueprint to be great at something, it will change and transform their lives. But one of the things that is hurting most churches is that leaders aren't being developed. And so the full measure of what the church could be is not coming forward. It's not coming forward. Church is one of the places where we allow folks to work without proper training. My Lord, today, we got to train. We got to train people. Look at this. I love what Pastor Coles is saying too. He said we have to trust before we train. I've learned that lesson. And another thing that goes with that, Pastor Coles, is that I've learned that training helps increase trust. If I'm training you and I'm telling you exactly what to do and how to get it done and where to go and so on and so on, man, I'm telling you, it is there. Look at Bishop Williams. We have to see what God sees in future leader and cultivate it. We have to. We got to cultivate it. Like God, when God sends the people, we've got to train them. I'm working on a book right now, and I'm hoping to have it finished in the next month or so, Lord willing. Y'all pray for me. But in the book, one of the things I talk about different kinds of teams, and I use an NBA analogy. And I talk about how you've got a team like the '04 Pistons who can win by just having 5 strong, solid players. Then you've got the team like the Michael Jordan Bulls, where you've got MJ, you've got Scotty, and then you've got everybody else who stars in their role, right? I talked about the LeBron teams of the past, where you've got this guy who is so overwhelming, but he's surrounded by people with a very specific skill set. And then you've got the Spurs, you got all these different teams. You've got to know what kind of team you have. And I'm telling you, most of us don't have a team where we've got a million superstars. And that's how we operate. We operate most often like we've got a bunch of superstars around us. And we got some really, really gifted people. But the reason the church can't operate like a superstar team is because this ain't like sports where we can call a timeout and we can take a break and we play in a season and we got to offset. This is real life. People burn out. And so even if you depend too heavily on your gifted people, you can lose them. Right. And it's one of the secrets. You've got to develop more leaders. As a matter of fact, The last church I pastored, when we wanted to grow that church, I didn't set a goal to add 50 new attendees to the church, even though we would eventually add more than that. I set a goal to increase the size of our pre-service huddle. I said, if we can go from 10 people to 25 people in our pre-service huddle, meaning that they're serving, that we've got 25 people engaged in executing the service every week, that'll make a world of difference. And so that's one of the things that you've got to think about, is you've got to think about leadership development. All right, let's keep going. Number 5, another cause for stagnation is financial stress. Now, I know I'm going to hit a vein with a bunch of y'all with this one. All right, I'm going to hit a vein. Financial stress. One of the reasons that many churches are stuck is because financial stress takes something out of you. You know, here's one of the things I've learned, and I know my wife is on the call and she can amen this. One of the things that I have learned is that I am at my worst when I'm under financial pressure. I'm at my worst, right? The way I feel anyway. I feel like I'm at my worst, all right? Now, that being said, sometimes I perform at my best because I got to do what you got to do type of mentality. But here's what I learned. And listen, if you don't know my story, I grew up in a single parent home in the inner city of Birmingham, Alabama, moving from one house or apartment to the next almost every year. I have lived in almost every neighborhood in Birmingham, which is why I can go anywhere and get along with people from almost any hood. Okay. Um, but so I know the struggle. I grew up in the struggle, and I spent so much of my time in my life in financial stress. But when I started to work myself out of it, one of the things I realized is that when I can free myself from financial stress, I can really be the leader that I'm called to be. I can really be the leader I'm called to be. And when I talk about financial stress, I'm talking about being so concerned about whether or not you can live your life and just pay your basic bills, or being worried about the church being able to pay its basic bills, and all of those different things, they will wear you down. I remember when we first planted the church. I never forget, we went through our first winter, or what we call winter here in the South, where it was cold, and you know our attendance went down, but we had to run the heat to keep people warm. Man, I'll never forget the first time we got $1,000 electric bill in that little storefront church. Man, I like to had a conniption. I literally considered shutting down the church for a month until until we could go figure it out. You know why? Because I knew it had to come out of our pocket. And we were already surviving on one income, because I had not embraced being bivocational at that time. And man, the stress of that, there was a matter of fact, during that same time, there was an opportunity that came along for a month, doc. Like, I was gonna shut it down. I was gonna shut it down. Like, listen, we as a family, we was already eating pancakes and hot dogs, like just trying to keep stuff as thin as possible, right? And we was gonna do it. And here's what's crazy: at that same time, an opportunity came along where this guy who had a TBN show reached out to me and said, "Hey, you know, we've seen some of what you guys are doing on social media," because we were live streaming at the time, and we see, you know, that you guys are really, you know, building a buzz and really doing some great. Like, man, we want to feature you on TBN. Like, can we feature you? Man, do you know? I said no to that opportunity because I was overwhelmed with the financial stress. I couldn't even think about it. All right. And so this is a cause of stagnation. Your focus on the finances is taking your focus off of the possibilities of the future. I would argue you can't even dream fully if your present is underwater in financial stress. And so you've got to have a plan to get to the other side of that. All right. So listen, here are 5. Somebody tell me real quick, of these 5, which one jumps out to you the most? Which one jumps out to you the most? Why 5? And while you give me that, I'm gonna share some of these comments. Look at this. I love this. He says the church leadership need to teach entrepreneurship and business for the congregation as Jesus required when he said, occupy until he returns, which means doing business. I love that. I embrace that for the rest of my life. I'll be bivocational. Even as I serve with other churches in unique capacities, one of the things that I have embraced is that I will always be bivocational because I've embraced businessry. That a part of my ministry is business. So I think that's super super important. All right. All right. So I see a lot of people say number 4, which is the leadership development. I see some number 2s, resistance to change. Number 1, I see a lot of y'all agree. Look at this. Somebody said, Pastor Edward said, my grandparents lived in Dolomite. Okay. Oh wow. That's right. Great. Birmingham creates some amazing, amazing people, amazing leaders. All right. So we got it. All right. So secret number 1. We talked about this. All right. So now let's move into secret number 2. All right. Now, again, remember, we got to get into this. And I am all on board with bivocational entrepreneurship, all of those things. I think it's vitally important. All right. Secret number 2. So let's bring it a little bit closer. All right. Your growth is directly connected to your willingness to make adjustments. Your willingness to make adjustments. All right. Here in Alabama, we don't have an NFL team, so college football is king around here. And I'm 45 minutes from the University of Alabama, from Tuscaloosa, where the great Nick Saban is the patron saint and head coach. All right. Nick Saban is an amazing coach. He has brought several championships to the area, and we celebrate and we love him for it. But you want to know one of my favorite things about Nick Saban, and one of the things that I think makes him so good is his willingness to make adjustments. He makes adjustments. Is that he is not so stubborn in what he wants to do that he ignores the changes that need to be made for him to accomplish the really big goal. And I want to say this to the leaders on the call right now. At some point, you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to decide whether or not it's important that you do things your way, or whether or not it's important that you accomplish the mission. You're going to have to decide, because those two things won't always be together. Sometimes the most successful thing you could do is to make an adjustment that you weren't prepared to make. Again, I spent most of my life as a football player playing one position, and all of my idols played that position. I love Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders. They were my guys, man. I wrote to them as a kid. Those are the guys that I wanted to be connected with. And then when I got to college, I'll never forget, one of my coaches said something to me. He said, hey, if you move to this position, like you saw what such and such was doing, he was an All-American. He is at NFL camp right now. If you move to this position, man, I'm telling you, it could be a game changer. And I'm sitting there like, man, all my life I've been planning to do it this way. And now here's an opportunity. But what's the goal? Was the goal for me to be successful or to do it my own way? All right. And so you've got to understand the mission. Look at what Bishop Williams said. I love this. My military background makes me always want to accomplish the mission. I love that. As a matter of fact, I've got a training in our program where I talk about the best kind of volunteers. And one of the best kind of volunteers you could ever have is former military people. They understand the chain of command, and they understand the importance of a mission. I kid you not. I kid you not. Military people often make amazing leaders because they understand that. All right. So let's talk about this, your willingness to make adjustments. So now I'm going to give you some solutions to the issues and the problems that we raise in secret number 1. All right. So now let's talk about 5 adjustments to move you towards flourishing. All right. 5 adjustments to move you towards flourishing. All right. Number 1, you need to revisit a unique purpose. One of my pet peeves is when churches choose as their mission statement or their purpose statement this generic set of words that look exactly the same as everybody else's. Now, don't get me wrong. All of the church has the same mission statement. Like, I believe the Great Commission applies to all of us. However, I also believe that our mission statement is an opportunity to express the unique way that God has called us to fulfill it. Because we all can't fulfill the Great Commission in every single way. And so, what we've got to embrace is how do we do it in our specific way? How do we do it in our specific way? In we were talking about entrepreneurship earlier, pastors, and one of the things that if you want to be a solid entrepreneur, one of the things that you have to learn is what they call niching down, which means really getting clear on the specific problem that you solve. Right? We started off working with, all kind of working with churches, and we work with some nonprofits, and we work with regular believers, and then eventually we came to the point where we said, hey, our specialty, we can work with everybody, but our specialty is that we help African American churches under 100. That's our niche down unique purpose. So now when people go out there and they see all these other programs like the ones that I was a part of, I was a part of Renegade Pastor with Nelson Searcy. I was in a mastermind with Michael Lukaszewski, who leads Church Fuel. I was with Rick Warren and his purpose-driven stuff. I was with all of those, and when I was in FIFA with Bishop T.D. Jakes, and I went to Project Gideon for I think four or 5 years in a row, whatever it was. I went through all of these, and I realized none of this stuff is contextualized for the people who really need it. It's not contextualized for the pastors who have less than 100 people in their church and they're trying to figure it out. And so we niche down. All right. And so what you got to figure it out is how do you do it your way? Come on, Pastor Samuels. Or I'm gonna call you apostle because you got to get the apostolic, you got to do the apostolic ministry. Like we got to do all these things, but it ain't the same for everybody. It's the truth. We have got to figure it out. Look, he says I was in all 4 programs too. We got to figure out what's the unique purpose. Because here's the truth about your unique purpose and your unique mission statement is that it says to people who are trying to figure out in a world where I got to pass by 20 churches to get to yours. Why do I want to come to yours? Why? And I encourage you. Here's another thing I encourage you to do. Most churches use language that only talks about the church. I would encourage you to figure out how your mission statement uses a language that tells people how you want to impact their lives. Right? The last church I pastored, our mission statement, one of the first things I did was adjust our mission statement, and I changed it to we exist to make, develop, and empower transform followers of Jesus Christ. Right? And when they wanted to know more details, make was about introducing people to Jesus. Developing was about growing people up in Jesus, and empowering was releasing people to go and serve in ministry with Jesus. Right? It was our unique way. Right? It wasn't just a generic way of communicating. So you need to revisit your mission. You need to revisit how you say it, and you need to make sure that your mission becomes an integral part of what you do so that people can grab it and go. That people can just type it out. I asked that question at the beginning. I said, I'm gonna give a gift card to the first person who can say, hey, we could type in our mission statement. And it took a minute, right? But if your mission statement is not portable, then I know people aren't constantly aren't intentionally living it out. So you need to have that. All right. Revisit your mission statement. All right. The second thing that you can do to move towards flourishing is you need to honestly face areas of change. All right. Let me ask you a hard question. What's the elephant in the room at your church? What's the elephant in the room? Come on, don't act shy. You know what it is. You know what it is. Everybody know what it is. We all know what the elephant in the room is. When are you going to face that elephant? Because here's one of the things that hurts your ability to flourish is that when new people come into your culture, they have not made a pet of that elephant like you have. And so when they look at that elephant and see how disruptive that elephant is, right? When they look at that elephant and they see it, and they look at you and they see that you see it, but you're not addressing it, then you begin to lose credibility with them. So what's the elephant in the room? You need to be honest about it and you need to come face to face with it. Bishop Williams said, it's me as a female pastor. If that's the elephant in the room, then come face to face with it. And you can make it very clear that, hey, look, this is who we are. This is what we believe. If you want to get on board, come on. If you don't, I'll holler at you. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to sit here and go back and forth about something that's already been settled in our culture. And I get it. Everybody has different values about that. And they get to vote with their feet. But you don't need to run away from that. What's the elephant in the room? All right. Sometimes the elephant in the room is a disruptive leader. It's somebody who won't get in alignment with what God is trying to do. Sometimes, as I see one pastor saying, it's an old leader still being in the room who is causing disruption. Right? What is the elephant in the room? What's the elephant in the room? You got to deal with it. Pastor Saples said it's a lack of attendance. That's an elephant in the room. Absolutely. Especially if you got other leaders, because they awkward and they're sensing like, okay, man, we're not quite moving forward. And they know you see it. That's the elephant in the room. So rather than running from it, face it. I remember when I was younger and we were in the church, one of the things that I would often see is that if we had like an evening program and a lot of people weren't there, what was the first thing somebody on the microphone was going to say? They was going to say, well, hey, where two or three are gathered. Hey, where two or three are gathered, he's in the midst, right? It was an elephant in the room. We already knew, right? It was an elephant in the room. So face it. Face that, hey, look, we need to change this. I'm telling you. Please hear me, pastors. Please hear me, pastors. All right. So let me share another part of my life. And if you stick with me on this analogy, I promise it's going to come back home. All right. I love hero movies, right? I'm all into it. Matter of fact, full disclosure, I just watched Iron Man. What else did I watch this morning? I watched something else this morning, right? I just watched Iron Man. I think I watched Iron Man 2 this morning, something like that. All right. I love those superhero movies, right? But for those of you who follow, there are two different camps. There's a camp where you got, what they call Marvel, and then you've got DC. Marvel is like your Iron Mans and your Captain Americas and Thors and all those Hulks. And then your DC is your Superman, your Batman, all of those kind of things like that. All right. For many, many years, Marvel was killing DC, even though I think DC came along first. One of the reasons that your Supermans and all of those weren't doing well for many, many years is because the heroes weren't flawed enough. Hear what I'm saying on this. I'm going somewhere, I promise you. The heroes weren't flawed enough. Superman was like unstoppable. Like there was nothing that could stop him or hurt him except this super rare thing called kryptonite. And that helped a little bit, but people couldn't connect with his character because none of us are Superman, right? But when Marvel came along, most of the Marvel heroes were flawed people who got their powers later. They were flawed people, right? They were flawed people who already had stuff that was wrong with them. And then out of that, they got their powers. Here's the point that I'm making. You trying to appear to be Superman or Superwoman who has all the answers and who can solve every problem is not helping you, it's hurting you. When you see a real problem, and I know I'm sitting on this a little bit, but I need to do this. All right. If you see a problem, please honestly face it. Honestly face it and give people an opportunity to solve it with you. Honestly face it. Honestly face it. Come on. Honestly face it. All right. I see Pastor Edwards talked about embracing tradition. Yes. I'm going to share because I'm going to share some real life examples coming up in a little bit. All right. I'm about to get to that in just a second. So I love that you shared that. All right. So honestly face areas of change. All right. Number 3 is you need to reconnect with your community. All right. And I'm going to speed up through these just a little bit. All right. So if your community has changed, And we talked about that one of the issues is being disconnected from your new community. How are you going to reconnect with your community? One of the things that you need to do is you need to reassess your community. You need to reassess your community. All right. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. I want you to write down this website called City Data. City Data. CITY DATA. All right. And so after we get off this call or sometime next week, what I want you to do is I want you to type in the name of your city and state and city data, and I want you to Google it. All right. So type in Brooklyn, New York, city data, Birmingham, Alabama, city data, Sunrise, Florida, city data, Dallas, Texas, city data. All right. And I want you to Google it. And what it's going to do is that it's going to pull you up a demographic report about your city. And if you want to get more specific, it'll even show you the neighborhoods and the different zip codes. You can even type in your zip code and city data, and it'll pull up data on your city. Like I just saved somebody like thousands of dollars right there, just being able to do a demographic study on your community. All right. So literally take a minute and just reconnect and rediscover your community. What's really happening in the community that you're in? Like I think it's important that you know. You want to know how you can serve your community? What are the top 3 crimes committed in your zip code? You need to go find out because City Data will tell you. What are the schools in your zip code and what are their ratings? What's the most frequent profession in your zip code? You need to reconnect with your community, and City Data will help you do that. All right. So you need to go in there, you need to reconnect, and you need to figure out what's really happening there. The second thing you need to do is you need to figure out how are you going to digitally connect with the people who speak your language. Listen, I don't care who you are, I don't care how weird you are. There is a group of people, and I say that, I'm kind of joking a little bit when I say how weird you are, right? But there's a group of people out there just for you. All right. Pastor Roberts, it's not a needs assessment, but you can do something similar. The website that I'm giving you with City Data is it's going to show you, it's going to break down everything about your zip code. It's going to tell you the racial makeup. It's going to tell you the population. It's going to give you crime stats. It's going to give you financial breakdowns, average income per household. It's going to tell you the what people are doing. It's going to tell you the local colleges and university schools, how many people attend them, all those kind of things. It's going to break it down for you, and it's going to be so valuable because let's say for example, your church is filled with people who are 50 and above, and you want to reach more young people. Knowing the community college or the universities within, you know, 10 to 20 miles of your church and how many students they have can help you make a good decision about whether or not you want to invest some resources into reaching people from that university. So let's say for example, you're in New York, right? And let's say NYU is close to your church. You could then run Facebook ads and target people who like or who are connected with NYU. And you could target them to show them videos about your church and about getting connected with your church with a link to a form that says, hey, look, plan your visit. But you need the right information to make that decision. All right. So just think about how you're going to reconnect with your community. All right. Number 4, here's another thing you need to do. You need to build a plan for new leaders. All right. Here's one of the mistakes that many leaders make is that they think that they need to wait until new leaders show up to build a plan. And I'm telling you, sometimes God doesn't send rain until he sees your bucket. So I'm telling you, build your bucket first. Build a plan for how you can begin to develop new leaders. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you got to build a plan. I don't care if your plan is I'll give you, matter of fact, I'll give you my plan for the church that I most recently pastored. Every first Sunday, we catered dinner after service. Right? We catered dinner after service. And after service, our entire leadership team, that was people who led a ministry in our church and their families. We sat down and we had a meal together for 30 minutes. It was just fellowship, hanging out, no agenda. And then 30 minutes in, I said to all the leaders, all right, let's shift to another room while their families kept chilling, kept eating. We went in another room and we worked on development. We talked about upcoming projects. We talked about, I talked through some kind of development piece. We talked about all those kinds of things. Right. And so that was a huge part of our development. Right. Uh, some of the pastors in our boot camp can tell you one of the things that I encourage is carve out some time to spend with your leaders one-on-one, wherever you can. Take them to coffee, take them to lunch, take them to dinner. Just spend time with one person a week, 3 people a week, whatever it is. You're gonna eat anyway. Most of us eat at least 2 meals a day. Why not do one of those meals with somebody else? All right. So you need to build a plan for leaders. You need to be prepared for it. If you're asking God to send it, you need to be prepared for it. One of the greatest travesties that I see in the church is us praying for stuff that we're not prepared for, or praying for things that we're unwilling to prepare for. If you're asking God to send you new leaders, start preparing for them. If a new leader shows up to your church this weekend, what's step 1? All right. And then number 5, I want to challenge you to take a new approach to giving. Financial stress is holding back your ability to be creative. Right. So what I want to challenge you to do is take a new approach. Take a new approach to giving. All right. And I'm going to give you a couple of practical things. One thing that you could do is that make sure that you have multiple ways for people to give. All right, multiple ways. Right. And this is super basic. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with some of you, but make sure that people can give in person, that people can give via text, they can give online, they can give via Zelle, via Cash App, all of those different things. Because the thing that's true about all those different services is that when people find their favorite one, they stick with it. And so it's not a good idea to say, okay, look, we got Cash App, so anybody who wants to give like that can give via Cash App. Well, the person who loves Venmo doesn't trust Cash App. That's why they got Venmo. They think Cash App isn't secure enough. And then the person who has Zelle uses Zelle because it's directly connected to their bank account, because Zelle connects to your bank account, right? And to your banking app, depending on who you use. And so it would be smart to have all of them. And I know what you're thinking. Like, why have all of them? People not going to give through. Well, here's the thing. If there's one person who is willing to give through a platform, it's worth it. If you tell me if this would be a bad idea, if every Sunday your giving is, we had 30% of our giving came in-house through cash, 20% came in via text, another 20% came in via Cash App, because that's all my millennials and Gen Xers. But then I got another 5% that came in via Zelle, another 5% that came in via Venmo, and then the rest came in later throughout the week. Who would be mad at that? I don't care if it's an extra $100. If all you get on a Sunday is $100 that come through Venmo, you can use that to go get you some invite cards printed and go invite 2,000 more people to church. How you doing? Come on, somebody. Take a new approach to giving. All right. That's one part. The other part of it is, I want to challenge you with something. Teach generosity. Teach generosity. And again, for those of you in the program, you already know this, but teach generosity when it comes to giving. I think we are limiting what God can do if we get stuck on the tithe. It is my firm belief that the tithe was meant to be the floor, not the ceiling. And if you teach generosity, you give people the tools they need to go above and beyond. See, when I teach the tithe, I give you license to give your 10% and stop. But when I teach generosity, none of us stop until the mission is complete. None of us stop till the mission is complete. So if we're saying, hey, we need to we're going to feed the teachers at this local school. They've been going through some hard times, and we just want to go and cater Italian food for these 50 teachers and staff members at this school, all right, then if I'm teaching tithing, once people give their 10%, if that ain't enough, too bad. But if I'm teaching generosity, even if you gave your 10% and I say, hey, we still about $50 short, you're still a part of the mission. And that's a very light and shallow example. Very light and shallow example. The bigger example is the Acts church who shared all things common. If there is a need that the church carries, we're all in it together. And here's one of the things I discovered is that when you teach people to be generous givers, and we talk about the 5 different type of givers in the program, but if you teach people to be generous givers, I'm telling you that you'll find yourself living above the line, not just on the line. Get the people off the training wheels. Tie the training wheels. In the New Testament, everything I am belongs to God. And this is not to manipulate people to give more than what they have. This is to set a kingdom culture of generosity that says there's more that God wants to do through me, but it's about me and my willingness to make an adjustment. All right. So real quick, we're about to go through the home stretch. Tell me which one of these 5 was most impactful for you. 5 adjustments to help you move towards flourishing. Give me your best ones, or the ones that really jumped out to you, and the ones that were really, really strong to you. All right. I love that. Generosity, to be a cheerful giver. That's it. Bishop Williams said, I'm a giver and I teach the same. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we've got to make sure that we make these adjustments, that we make the adjustments. All right. So we're getting ready to go. The members expect my wife and I to support the church. Yep, that's a culture thing. And again, it's one of those things, Pastor Staples, that you can absolutely break through. You can absolutely break through. Unfortunately, it won't break through with every single person. But I'm telling you, you can break through with people in your church. Sometimes this is why I think it's so important, going back to number 2, to honestly face areas of change. That's an area of change. That's an elephant in the room I need to talk about. That, hey, look, everybody thinks that we're the ones, right? And maybe it's because I know you're business owners, and when you're a business owner and you're not dying, people assume you're rich. I think people, when you're a bivocational pastor, people put you in 2 categories: the person who just barely getting by, and the person who has more than they could ever dream of. And that is not true, but those are the categories that they sometimes put us in. And so one of the things, Pastor Staples, is to reset that belief or reframe it. And that doesn't mean that you say, hey, we over here struggling. And sometimes it means that, hey, look, we're living blessed because we do blessed stuff, and we trying to get you to do the same. I'm not coming down to where you are. No, I'm not gonna pour mouth just to make you feel comfortable, right? But I will invite you to come up to where I'm living on these kingdom principles. All right. So it looks like, man, we got a good mix. A lot of you are really looking at a couple of these different ones. All right. Beautiful. All right. So let's go to number 3, and then we'll get ready for Q&A. So if you have some questions, go ahead and get your questions together. And if you want to come on screen to share them, I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that here shortly. All right. So here is the third and final secret. And this is so important. Growing churches get outside help. All right. I mentioned earlier that I've been a part of a bunch of different programs. One of the ones that I did mention I was a part of this group called C3 Global, led by Ed Young Jr. out in Grapevine, Texas. And so I used to go to the conference. As a matter of fact, my wife and I, we spoke at the conference in breakout sessions, and we were featured in the conference before, and all these kind of things. And it was a huge conference. It was about 5,000 people in the conference. As a matter of fact, I was just talking with with Pastor Chappell from Faith Church LA just 2 days ago. I was telling him, because this is a story I don't tell often. I was in that conference with about 5,000 people in it the first year I went. And Stephen Furtick stood me up in the conference, told my story, pointed to me, and told me that God was calling me to be an agent of change, right? I got the video to this day. Matter of fact, if y'all follow me on social media, you'll probably see it coming up soon. But literally in this conference, right? So this little dude who had spent his last to get there. Like literally, I sit on the couch and cried. I preached faith one Sunday and went home and was broken myself because I'm sitting here like, I know I need to go to this conference, but I ain't even got the money to spare to go. Financial stress, right? And this is around that same time I had turned down these different opportunities and all this kind of stuff like that. And my wife looked at me and she said, "Babe, just go. If they turn the lights off, we'll figure it out. Just go." That's how bad it was for us at the time. And I literally got in the car and just went, man. I had enough to register for the conference, get the hotel, do the dollar menu for all my meals, and make it there and back. Right. I think I was staying in one of the cheapest motels I could find. All right. I remember the bed was so uncomfortable. Man, I slept with all my clothes on because I was like, man, look, I'm just here just so I can get through. All right. I went to that conference. Stephen Furtick calls my name, tells my story because I had talked to him in between sessions. And I knew his story. His story was that before they hit it big, the seven of them piled up in a car, drove to the conference, slept all on the floor in a hotel room. They were so broke, they went to Golden Corral for breakfast or for lunch and stayed through dinner. Right. And I told him, I said, look, man, I'm on the same kind of journey. And he said, man, listen, God is going to do it. He called my name and stood me up in that session. People from all across this conference started walking up to me, putting checks and business cards and money in my hand. I left that conference with $3,000 in my pocket. Like it completely transformed my life. But it never would have happened unless I was willing to have the faith to get outside help. Here's the reality. If we could solve all of our problems ourselves, we would have solved it. And I'll come to that same conclusion. Like, listen, you can ask my wife. I spent the first coaching program I joined was $37, right? From a business standpoint, right? So I'm going business now. Then I joined a program that cost me $1,500 and I cried while I paid it because I was like, man, this is a lot. Then the next program I joined cost me $7,500. And the last one that I just did cost me $15,000, right? But here's the reality. I could not solve these problems on my own, so I had to get outside help. And I'm going to show you a really hard thing, but I need you to see it. There are two major factors in revitalization. And if you've ever read Simple Church by Tom Rainer, you already know where I'm going with this because this is where some of this research comes from. All right. Is that churches who turn it around, they usually do one or two things. They either get a new pastor or they get a new approach. And I'm telling you, we don't want to have to depend on option number one because the church is in a crisis right now where we don't have enough pastors to go around. Let me take that back. We don't have enough trained pastors to go around. Because I mean, people can give themselves a title these days, but we don't have enough trained and called pastors to go around. And so instead of getting a new pastor, what we need to focus on is how do we just change our approach? Right. And it does my heart well when I see some of the pastors on this call, because some of the pastors on this call I know have brought a new approach. I see people, some of you on this call from the historic Pleasant Green Baptist Church up in Lexington, Kentucky. 200 and Brother Speed, correct me. Is it 263-year-old church? Oldest church on this side of the Allegheny Mountains, right? Started by a free slave years and years ago. But I know their pastor personally. Matter of fact, I was there for his installation in, I think, December. 232 years old. And I've seen that they did both. We had a new pastor, but he brought a new approach. And what God is doing there is amazing. Every time I talk to him, I'm just like, man, like this is crazy how God is turning this thing around. Right? Pastors, the other pastors who are on this call could call so many names who have seen things turn around. But we got to give an approach. All right. So remember, I told you this, the secret to successful church revitalization is understanding what's causing stagnation. So let me show you some examples of some churches who turned it around and we'll do our Q&A. All right. Here are some real examples. Example number one is the Church of the Champions. This happens to be a church that I planted and pastored for many years. And I'm going to be honest. I told y'all I was impatient. So we planted this church and about, on launch day, We had a plan. So 99 people showed up on launch day, and it was amazing. It was great. And then within about 5 months, we had grown it down to about 30 people. And man, it was tough. And after I went through that winter, that December, where we had to spend that money out of pocket, and I thought we was gonna go bankrupt, I was second guessing whether or not I was called to it. I really, really was. I was second guessing it. And so I went out and I started learning and I started trying different things and I started taking a different approach. And man, whoever would have guessed that within about 3 years, we would add 300 people to that church. It was an amazing God thing, but it came because we took a different approach. I'll tell you another example. Inglewood Baptist Church down in Pensacola, Florida. And we went down. This is actually the first church that ever brought me in as a consultant. As a matter of fact, he heard me speak at a conference, and he said, "Hey man, I want you to come do my anniversary." I was like, "Bro," I was like, "I think you got the wrong person, man. Out of everybody who was on that stage and who was in that room, I ain't the preacher." I said, "I'm a teacher, right? That's what I do, man." He was like, "No, I know exactly what God said. It's you." And so he brought me down, and I went to go and meet with his team, and come to find out, they were at a crux. Here was this pastor. He had a few people from the young millennial generation, and he had a church that had been built on the older generation. Now, this church was in a building that seats 1,500 people, and it had grown down to less than 100 people. Most of those people who were in leadership were all from the former generation. They were older people who were 60 and above. And so, what was happening is the young people that had come were trying to partner in the ministry, but the older people who had been there wanted them to do things exactly the way that they had done them. And they were telling them, "Hey, look, this is not going to work. The people we're trying to reach are not going to respond to this. Like, they're not going to come into this." And so there was conflict. And it was pretty bad. It was so bad to the point where the pastor was considering that it wasn't going to work because the church was getting smaller and smaller. And yet the leadership was really struggling to make adjustments and they wouldn't adjust. And so he brings me in, who was wildly inexperienced at that time. But one of the things I love about being inexperienced, as I still consider myself in some ways inexperienced, is that you tend to really lean on the Holy Spirit and trust what He's giving you. And so I went down, and within about 30 minutes of our Saturday workshop, I could see who the ringleader was. It was one of the deacons. It was one of the deacons. It was Deacon, and so I saw Deke, and so I asked a question to Deke. I said, "Deke, tell me somebody in your life who needs the gospel, who needs Jesus right now." And he said, "Well, it's my grandson." I said, "Why do you say he needs Jesus?" He said, "Well, everybody needs Jesus." I said, "Well, be specific. Why does he specifically need you? Why did he come to mind?" And he sat back. And he said, "Well, he's a good kid, but he started running with the wrong crew." I said, "Okay." I said, "What do you think will happen if he doesn't get Jesus?" And he looked and he said, "So he's probably gonna end up dead or in jail." By now he's tearing up, right? So this is the elephant in the room that I'm talking to right now. I said, "Okay." I said, "So," I said, "if your grandson came to this church on Sunday, do you think he would enjoy it? Do you think he would connect with it?" And he said, "No, he wouldn't." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because it just ain't he don't dress up, and he probably wouldn't, he I don't think he would understand." And I said, "Okay." I said, "What if I told you that your pastor was trying to help you build a church that your grandson would love? Would that mean something to you?" And now he's crying. He said, "Yeah, it would." He said, "Yeah, it would." And I see now I'm standing in the way of that. And everything changed. They moved from conflict to synergy. Last time I talked to Pastor Watson, man, they were just absolutely going through the roof to the point where now they're getting ready to buy a piece of property from the city, and the city is getting ready to buy their own facility so that they can expand into multiple campuses. And I'm telling you, it's by walking through some of the things that we're talking about right now. The last one I'll talk about is Epiphany Church Wilmington. Those of you who are in our program, you know about this one. They went from 15 to 85 in 8 months. And they also had a 40% budget increase. Now, there are some other people on this call who I could ask, and they could tell you too about how they've seen their church change and their budget increase by getting help and by getting the help they needed to take the next step. All right. And so you've got to be willing to do the same thing if you want to go forward. All right. So here's a question that I know you're asking. How do I implement this in my church? All right. Well, here's the thing. To this point, we've been doing a program called the Church Systems Boot Camp, and our goal has been to solve these issues and more. And with the Church Systems Boot Camp, we really walk alongside pastors. And I'm gonna go ahead and be honest with you. What we have done in the Church Systems Boot Camp is we're not bringing people into that just yet, right? And the reason we're not bringing new people into the Church Systems Boot Camp is because I want to stay available to work with people in that boot camp. And so right now, some of the very pastors that you see in the chat, I'm keeping myself flexible so I can make sure I give them the attention that they need. So when they hit me up and say, "Hey, can we do a call?" Then I can say, "Yeah, let's jump on a call so I can help you walk through this issue." When they hit me up and say, "Can you come and visit?" I want to be able to do it. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to create another way that I could help churches, specifically churches that have less than 100 and even less than 50 people, in a way that helps them out and helps them take a next step. And so that's why I just created the Church Systems Institute. And the Church Systems Institute is a little bit different. All right. So for all of you who are in the boot camp, you have this and more. So you don't even have to worry about this. But for those of you who are looking for some help, all right, here is how we're going to help you with the Church Systems Institute. There are a couple of things that we include in the Institute that make it worthwhile for you. Number one, I told you one of your challenges is you need a unique vision. Well, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a course and a template, a blueprint to help you map through what your vision is and what your vision looks like for the next 1 year. We go away every year. We invite our leaders to join us for a retreat. That retreat typically costs somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 to attend. And at that retreat, we spend a week in a beach house in Destin, Florida. We all live in the same house together. We go to restaurants. We go ride golf carts and go-karts. We have fun. We eat good food, all of those different things. But the biggest thing we do at that retreat is that we help every pastor build a strategic plan for the next 1 year, for the next 12 months. Well, inside the Institute, I'm going to give you that template and the training blueprint to go along with it. And it's called the Kingdom Advanced. So the second thing, all right, not only will you get the Kingdom Advanced, but I'm also going to give you access to our weekly coaching call. That means that every week you can jump on a coaching call where we're going to be teaching through some specific topic to help you move the needle forward. Right now, we're preparing for the fall launch. For those of you who don't know, the fall launch is almost like a New Year's Day in the middle of the year. It's really kicking the hitting the reset button on the church in the middle of the year, where we're helping every church plan that blueprint. We're all helping you plan the series. We're giving you the graphics. We're writing sermons together. We're doing all of that on our coaching call right now. And so as a part of the Church Systems Institute, I'm going to give you the blueprint, and I'm also going to give you access to the weekly coaching call. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a management software. So that means you get the Kingdom Advanced, the weekly coaching call, and the management software. And with that software, you can build your own website because it is a website platform. You can also email and text people. You can also manage your social media. You can take forms, and you have a database for the people in your church. If you're one of those people who wants to get into marketing and Facebook ads, you can even see reports of how well your ads are performing right there from the software. All right. So that's another thing I'm going to give you as a part of this. Another thing, all right, you're going to get the Kingdom Advanced Strategic Plan, the weekly coaching call, the management software, and then I'm going to give you the systems training and documents. So for this institute, I'm just going to give you the first 3 modules of our system. I'm going to give you enough to get started. You don't need the whole shebang yet. Our Church Systems Bootcamp members, they have access to volunteer stuff and documents. They have access to giving. They have access to all of these small groups, leadership development, all these different things, but you don't need that just yet. If your church is under 100, you just need the foundational stuff. So I'm just going to give you those foundational things. I'm going to give you systems to plan your worship service, systems for what to do with new people when they show up and how to turn them into disciples and new members. And I'm going to give you simple systems on evangelism, how to reach people and how to get them in the room. And not only am I going to train you via video, right? Because one of the issues we talked about is that you need a plan for training leaders. Well, here's how I'm going to help you do that. I'm going to give you a library that you can point your leaders to, that so that I can train them for you. I'm going to give them the documents and the videos to make it really, really simple and easy. So all they've got to do is take the next step. All right. That's not all. One more thing I'm going to do. I'm going to give you just to sweeten the spot. I'm going to give you the strategic guide, the weekly coaching call, the management software, the training and the documents, and I'm going to give you a digital discipleship course. I'm going to give you a course that you can use to bring people in. It's already built. It's very plainly branded, but you can take it and you can give it, and people can join your church and become members, even down to being ready to come back to you for graduation with their certificate. It's going to be set up and it's going to be automated so it runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'm going to give that to you as a part of this. So you've got the strategic guide, the weekly coaching call, the management software, the systems training, and the discipleship course that's going to come out to a total value of about $13,000. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that's not what we charge for our program, nor is it what I'm going to charge you. But I do have a question I want you to answer for me. All right. If I told you that I could guarantee that it would add 50 new people to your church, would it be worth $13,000 to add 50 new people to your church? All right. If you knew you're going to get 50 people, they were going to be committed disciples who are part of your vision going forward over the next 1 year, would it be worth it? Somebody tell me in the chat, would it be worth it? If you knew that you could trade just literally $13,000 for 50 people, would it be worth it? All right. I see somebody say yes, 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 it would be worth it. It would be worth it to have new volunteers, new members, new believers, all of that. All right, it would be worth it. So let's dial down just a little bit more. What if we cut that in half and we said, you know what, it's only $6,000, but I'm going to guarantee that you're going to see 50 people, 50 new people over the next 1 year are going to come into your church, be a part of your church. We're going to show you how to do it. So this is volunteers, this is leaders, this is ministry. Would it be worth it? Would it be worth it for everything to not fall on your shoulders, for you to not have to do it yourself? If you could do that, and you knew that, you know what, now I can go on vacation, or now I can take a break, or now I don't have to do everything, or now I can focus on preaching and praying, would it be worth it? All right, Eric says yes, it would still be worth it. All right, let's go down some more. What if it was 3? Like, would it be worth it? Would it be worth it to say, man, look, over the next 1 year, here's how different our church is going to be, simply because we connected with this Church Systems Institute and took a really, really easy and simple opportunity to take the next step forward. Would it still be worth it? Yes, obviously it would still be worth it. Well, here's the beauty of it. We built this for churches that are 50 and below. We built it just for you. We built it with you in mind. And so for those of you who are here today, I'm going to offer you the Church Systems Bootcamp for just $197 a month. That's it. $197 a month, less than $50 a week. You can be a part of the Church Systems Institute. And I will tell you, if you join the Church Systems Institute, in the future, you will be eligible to upgrade to the Church Systems Bootcamp, but the Church Systems Bootcamp has now become an exclusive, but you would be eligible to join in the future, and you get access to some other things that you won't necessarily have today. But if you want to take that next step, it's literally as simple as joining the Church Systems Institute for just $197 a month. And for those of you who want to do it, I just put it right there in the chat. Look at that. Pastor Samuel, who is a part of our boot camp, can tell you, like, this is a crazy value, because you're going to get more value than that in the first call where we get on. Literally, the moment you sign up, you're going to get a text message that's going to say, hey, look, let's schedule an onboarding call. And that onboarding call is a 1-hour call with me. So you and I are going to be talking one-on-one. You can bring your leaders if you want. And I can tell you right now, just in that one call, you're going to get way more value than what it's going to cost you. So if that's you and you want to be a part of it, That's my opportunity to you. All right, real quick. If you're on the call and you say, look, I want to do this, I want to be a part of this, somebody just drop me a yes in the comments. Just drop a yes in the chat. And then we're about to go into our Q&A so I can start answering some questions. But I want to know so I can send this to you. I can email it to you. I can text it to you. I can make sure that I get you locked in and make sure that you're ready to take the next step so that you can be a part of it. All right. I see a couple of yeses who want to be a part. If that's you, drop yes in the comments and we'll make sure that we start getting you plugged in and plugged up. Because I'm telling you, this I think will be an absolute game changer for you. All right. So if you can see my comment up there, all you've got to do is just go up there, look at that comment, copy that link right there, click it, and it'll take you straight to the page where you can plug in and where you can share. All right. So now let's jump into some Q&A. All right. So I'm going to put myself on screen now. If you have a question, drop it in the chat. If there's something specific that you want to dive down, this is the time that's for you now. Right. So this is all for you. So now you got me here as your personal consultant for the next few minutes. If you have a question, drop it right now in the chat and I'll answer that question for you. Let me get a little bit more light in here. I'm a little chocolate fellow. There we go. All right. So listen, if you have a question, drop it. I see you, Pastor McDaniel, McCall, Bishop Williams, Pastor Staples, Pastor Lynch, Millender, and Smith. Listen, I'm super excited about seeing what God will do in your ministries as you commit to jumping in and being a part of the program. So somebody, if you would, try and click that link. Let me know that it works for you. If it doesn't, let me know. And if you can't copy and paste it, or if you can't click it, just let me know real quick and I will make sure that we text it to you. We'll text it directly to you as soon as we're done with this so that you'll have it. All right. If you have a question about something we've talked about, go ahead and let me know right now. As a matter of fact, let me pull this back on screen. Really, I want to go back to one of the earlier slides that we were walking down through. And here's where I want to go. We talked about the secret to successful growth being understanding what's causing your stagnation. And we looked at 5 different options. Look at those 5 options. All these different things. If you have a question about one of these 5 things, let me know and we can jump in and we can talk about it and we can dive down into it. All right. So look at this. Here's one of the questions that I got. All right, let me pull it up. Give me 1 second. I'm going through because they keep moving every time somebody says something. They go on down the list. All right. All right. Okay, I'm trying to get back to it. All right. All right, let's go. Pastor McCall. He says, what can I do with this systems when I have some individuals who are the problem in keeping the church from growing? Man, that is a good question. That's how you start this thing off with a bang. All right. So a couple of things I would say to that, Pastor McCall, and I know you and I have talked a couple of times before, and so I know a little bit about what God is doing. I think you're out close to Las Vegas, if I remember correctly. Um, doing it. Matter of fact, fun fact, I will be out your way coming up next month, visiting with one of our churches out in Nevada. But here's one of the things that I would say, Pastor McCall. I think there's a couple of things that's got to happen. Number one, I think the first thing that I think you have to be clear about is what is the organizational structure in the church? Because it's one thing for people to be complaining. It's another thing for them to be complaining and have the authority to stop you from moving forward. All right. And so you need to understand which camp they're in. If these are, I'm going to assume these are leaders who have some authority and some power who are standing in the way. Then the thing I would ask you is what kinds of things are they standing in the way of? Right? Are they standing in the way of the things that you want to change? Or are they standing in the way of some things that you want to do differently? Are they standing in the way of some stuff you want to do with the budget? All of those different things I think are important to answer. And I'll share with you something that a mentor of mine shared with me years ago. He said, sometimes when you're trying to transition a culture, he says you have to build a new congregation alongside the old congregation. And he said, here's what you got to do. He says, if you've got less than 50 people, because at the time I was leading a church that was less than 50 people. He said, man, look, you and Latoya, go out there and find 50 new people that you start doing life and ministry with. He says, and eventually, if you bring them in, he says they will outnumber the old crew that's holding things back or just standing in the way. He says, and then you go do what God has called you to do. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Is that sometimes, and that can be hard. That can be hard. I literally just lived through that. I literally just walked through that. So I know it's a challenge, but please hear what I'm saying. Is that people can get in the way of a lot of things, but they can't get in the way of your personal evangelism. They can't get in the way of the things that you can control. Sometimes what they get in the way of are the things that we're trying to do and the things that we're trying to get their help with doing rather. But when really sometimes the answer is there might be a season where you've got to go for it and you've got to go forth with clarity around what God has called you to do and trust that God will come alongside you as you walk. So that means there might be a season where you personally take responsibility for inviting 50 to 100 people to church every Sunday for the next 6 months, and you take personal responsibility for it. You maybe along the way find one or two people who will help you do it, and you just personally do it. Man, that's one of the things we're talking about in our relaunch plan, our fall launch plan, is that we're building blitz days where we're coaching teams through how to go out and intentionally invite people to church so that we can hit our goals. We're trying to make sure this fall launch that as many of our churches as possible can see 50 guests show up on service, and sometimes that's a part of it. So thank you for answering that, Pastor. Sometimes you got to step out there and you got to plug into it. Okay. Pastor Staples said, you want to talk about leadership development when leaders are not consistent or committed to showing up for training. I think that's a huge irony. But I'm going to just say this as raw and as honest as I can. If they are not committed to showing up and being present, then one or two things is true. Either one, what it means to be a leader has not been clearly defined enough for them, or number two, they're not living up to the standard and they're no longer leaders. And that's tough. But I'm telling you, one of the greatest gifts you can have is when you get to that place where stuff is so challenging and stuff is so hard that you realize that compromising to struggle isn't worth it. Because again, if we have a church under 50 and I'm personally struggling because my leaders won't commit and they won't take next steps and all of those kind of things like that, then and we're seeing that go in the opposite direction, then maybe they aren't the leaders to help us get there. And just maybe the Lord is waiting for me to recognize that before he sends the harvest that's going to be coming. And so I would say one or two things, Pastor. Either redefine what it means to be a leader. When you have clear definitions for leaders, for what a leader is, people will either qualify or disqualify themselves. It's not on you. It's on the qualifications. The Bible gives us the qualifications. This is what it means to be a leader. The moment you stop doing those things, you're no longer in leadership, right? Or you're on the process of being disqualified for leadership, right? And that's not being harsh or hard. It's simply saying the standard is a standard. The standard is a standard. When we lower the standard, people get hurt. And sometimes the people who get hurt is us. And so I would do that. And then the second thing is, if the people are showing you that they're no longer leaders, as hard as it might be, go ahead and release them so you can make space for the people that God will send. Right. So that's one of the things I would say, Pastor. I hope that is helpful. If that helps. Okay. Bishop Williams says, if financial stress is our biggest problem and it's because the pastor is the only person who has any source of income, how do you find a way? I'm guessing you're asking, how do you find more resources if you're the only thing? All right, great question. One of the things that I learned that helped me a long time ago is that you think of ministry almost like a triangle, right? And I promise you, I'm not Illuminati. I'm not throwing up some gang sign. Just think about look, I just know how people do. All right. So just think about a triangle, right? At the 3 points of that triangle are three different things. You've got people, you've got time, and you've got money. Whenever you're missing one of those things, you need to run to the other two. All right. So for you, for example, if finance is an issue, we don't have money, So that means you need to put extra effort into, you got to put extra time and people into helping you increase the resources. And so what that'll look like, because that's where we were in that first real example I showed you when we were church planners, we didn't have money, but we had time and people. And so one of the things that that meant for us is that I took the people that I did have, or I took the people that I could reach and I could find, and I poured as much time as I could into them. Like literally at the time we were reaching a lot of college students. We had, you know, 15 people in our living room every night for dinner for like a year and a half. Like literally, one of the reasons that my two older daughters are so socially, you know, normalized is because they were raised as little kids with college students all night. Like we would stay up and play Uno and grill and do Bible study with them like all the time. And eventually blossomed into amazing leaders. They went help me go and reach other people. I'm gonna just be honest with you. One of the things I think that's true about church growth that we need to get comfortable with, sometimes having enough people in the room will help you break through some of the issues that you wouldn't otherwise break through. That even if you get 50 people in the room who don't have no money, the fact that you can share and that other people can see that 50 people trusted you enough to come in the room will bring other people into the room. And so if finance is the issue, then you want to lean on time and people to try and reach others, which means, again, you might have to be the chief inviter. You're the chief evangelism officer of the church, right? You need to be the one who is setting aside time every week to go out and invite people to church, right? That you take, and I think you were one of the ones who said yes to the program. When you get in the program and you go into the evangelism module, you're going to see, I'm going to give you a template for an invite card. You need to go and print that invite card, and every single week, every single weekend, you go shopping anyway. Go to Target, walk around, and give one of those invites to every person you pass by. Go to Walmart, give it to every person you pass by. Go to Publix, go to the mall, every person you pass by, just say, hey, I would just love to invite you to this. And you just keep walking. If they want to talk, great. If they don't, whatever. I promise you, if you do that consistently for about 60 days, I guarantee you it'll completely start to add people to your church. It'll start to change it, all right? Because there are people out there who want the church. It's just hard because we don't know who they are before they say yes. I think that's one of the things we miss, and I'm going to the next question about the parable of the talents, is that the truth of the matter is you don't always know the full quality of the soil until it's harvest time. And so you just got to sow the seed, right? And sometimes that seed is as simply as giving an invite card and 9 people saying no, thank you. But then the 10th one saying, yes, I'll take it. And them showing up on church on Sunday, and everything is different. All right. Dr. Flower says, does this program offer help with media? Great question. Yes, it does, in 2 ways. One, we have a module that's going to walk you through how to set up your online campus, right? And that means we'll show you some of the things, some of the basic things that you will need in order to do live streaming and stuff like that. But the bigger thing that it does is that we will show you, we will give you a social media posting schedule. So we'll show you, if you're trying to get started with social media, what should you be posting and when should you be posting it? And so we will give you those exact things. And then at some places, depending on what it is, we will also give you some templates to help you do that. And within the software, you'll actually have the ability to schedule posts to go out to all of your pages, where you can make all of your posts at once, schedule them on what days and times to go out, and they'll go out automatically. So we do help you in that way. And then, of course, don't forget, on our weekly coaching call, we talk about different things. So we had Angela Marks come out and do a call on children's ministry. A couple of weeks ago, I did a session on redoing the bylaws of the church. We talk about different things. And so if there's ever an issue that people within the program are facing, then yes, we will bring in somebody to help you solve that issue and to help you work through it. So great question. All right. So y'all done started coming fast. So let me get on down in here. All right. All right. So Pastor Lynch, he says, what do you do with that person who appears to go out of their way to intentionally keep potential new members from joining the church in order to try and maintain their power and authority? Lord Jesus. If I could share my testimony, this is a tough one, Pastor Lynch. And so I'm going to tell you a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to give you what you already know. You got to fast and pray. You have got to fast and pray, because this is one of the ways that the enemy attacks the church. But I also understand that when God is trying to do something, he still will rise up to protect his bride, because it's his bride before it's even ours. So that's the first thing I would do. Is I would fast and pray. The second thing I would do is I would do my best to try to understand why. Like, because you said the person, they want to maintain their power and authority. Like, like I would be interested to know what specifically is their power and authority. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're in charge of the finances? Does it mean that they want to keep it as a family church? Does it mean that they want to be, over the choir or whatever? What does that mean when for them to try and keep their power and authority? And then whatever that is, is again, I would address that thing head on. Are there other people who recognize what they're doing? And do you have other people around you who are willing to stand up to it with you? That's the other thing, is that, if I could do things differently as a pastor, one of the things that I would do is I would start to see everything that God shows me through the lens of how it brings value and victory to the other people who are being affected, and I would bring it to their attention more often. So, for example, if this person, let's just say hypothetically, they were over discipleship, and when people come in, they trying to push people away, is I would grab the people in our congregation who have family members who need to come to faith, and they really want to see them get to faith. And I would say to them, hey, look, I want you to do me a favor. This next discipleship class, as new people come through it, I want you to go through it too. I want you to go through that next class. And when you go through that next class, I want you to just give me your feedback, and let them go in and see what's happening. Another thing I would do, and I did a Facebook video about this just I think yesterday or day before yesterday. One of the things that I would do is I would make sure that every new person who comes to that church connects with me before they connect with anybody else. Meaning that their first point of contact is, they visited today, is, hey, let me take you. Can I take you to coffee this week? Can I take you to lunch this week? Hey, look, y'all want to go grab something to eat at the church? Like, that would be my first point of contact. All right. I did that. Me and my wife did that for the longest. Is that if somebody came to visit this Sunday, I would say, hey, look, if y'all come back next Sunday, we want to take y'all to dinner at the church. And most of them would be like, yeah, that'd be great. And they come back next Sunday and we take them to dinner at the church. Right. And so I would make sure that you connect with them first, so that you have an opportunity to set the foundation with them, and to walk with them on along the process, and then build a rapport, so that when something like that happens, they'll be willing to come back and tell you how to do it. So that's what I would do, Pastor. I would do that. Hope that's helpful. All right. And that's a tough one. Man, that's really, really tough. All right. How can I, as assistant pastor, implement simple systems in our church? Very easy. Very easy. I believe if you talk to your pastor, your senior pastor, and you let them know exactly what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, that you're trying to serve the church in this way, and so forth and so on. I don't know many pastors who would fight you on it. Because pastors are wrestling, and they know the same things that we talked about today. And as a matter of fact, I think these systems work best when people outside of the senior pastor get involved. I think it works best when the senior pastor can be plugged in doing what they have to do, but when they have a coalition of other people who would also come along to help do these different things, I think that's when the program is at its best. Because again, we cover worship planning. For the Institute, you're going to cover worship planning, you're going to cover assimilation or discipleship, and you're going to cover evangelism. The pastor doesn't need to do all those things himself. And so if you tell him that, hey, look, I want to go help us in this way, with the end game of helping us trying to add 50 new people to the church, I don't know many leaders who would fight you on that. So I would just be honest about what you're trying to do, and take the next step. I would tell you this, Pastor McDaniel, if I had an assistant pastor who came across something like this, one of the things that would mean a lot to me is if they said, hey, look, I want to try this thing. I want to try this program that I think could really, really help us. I want your blessing. But here's one of the things that I would do is I would say, look, it's only $197 a month. I'm going to take care of the first 30 days just so I can know exactly what it looks like, and I can start bringing some small wins. And then maybe next month, the time is right, the church can pick it up and we can go from there. Like if I had somebody who came to me with that, man, I'd be all over it. I got excited when somebody came to me with a children's curriculum and said, hey, look, I found one I like. I already bought it. We're going to go ahead and do it. Man, look, Man, I was so excited. It changed everything. So I would do the same thing, Pastor. I think if you do it that way, I think it'll make a huge difference, and it'll really help people take a next step. All right. So, so great question. Thank you for asking it. All right. Another quick look. There go Pastor saying it right there. Look, take the burden. Take the burden. That's it right there. All right. Okay. Here's the last question. I see another question from Pastor McCall. How do I implement this system with a leadership team who is stuck on the past success? Do I bypass them and seek out volunteers from the members? All right. I will share with you my experience. All right. My experience. One of the things that I would do is whenever I'm trying to change a culture, right? Because here's a rule of thumb. If you ever want to, um, if you ever want to strengthen a culture, raise up leaders from within. If you ever want to change a culture, bring in leaders from without. All right. That's just a general rule of thumb. All right. People from the outside come in with a different mindset to help move it forward. People from the inside are generally, uh, you know, they like to stay stuck in where they are. So here's what I would think about. I would look for the places within the vision where you can have impact in areas where the church has not been active. All right. So, for example, when I took over the church that I was leading and I came in, they didn't have a new members process at all. Right. They hadn't had a membership process for years. And when they did have one Sunday a month, the pastor would bring out a list and say, if you want your name on the membership roll, come and sign. And people would sign, and that was it. And they just kept the list, and that was it. And so what I did, instead of coming in and saying, hey, I want to take this list and I want to tear up this list and I want to do that, I didn't even talk about the list because they hadn't been doing it anyway. So I didn't even approach it. Instead of trying to improve an old thing, I tried to introduce a new thing. And so I said, instead, I'm going to create a team that's going to help people take next steps in their faith. Right. And so I took something I knew they wouldn't fight against, that I knew would be really hard for them to be against. And I went and recruited somebody new. And they were new, not a new believer, but new to the leadership team. I recruited them to come in and to lead that ministry. I said, hey, would you lead this ministry? Here's what we're trying to do, blah, 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 so on and so on. That ministry became one of the most successful ministries in our church, hands down, right? It crushed it. It was killing it. It did an amazing thing. And so it came in and it helped them go there. So I would consider the same thing, Pastor McCall, is to say, okay, if they're stuck on past success, okay, cool, that's where they are. But if you have a plan and you're using the stuff that we give you, you bring in somebody else and say to them, hey, look, I just need you to execute this. And as they execute it, you allow them and their success to really speak for itself. I think that's the fastest way to get where you need to go. That's what I would do. I would bring in somebody new, somebody in the congregation, new with a different mindset. And I say new because they haven't been in the old mindset. And I would allow them to help us lead that thing forward. That'd be my thought. All right. Pastor Bishop Williams said, I need an assistant pastor who would like to introduce new systems to enhance the church. Here's what I would say. It depends on the size of your church, Bishop Williams. If your church is 50 people or less, I wouldn't press for an assistant pastor just yet. Quite honestly, I wouldn't press for it until I got to about 125. I'm not saying don't get help. I'm not saying if God sends you somebody, don't train or don't raise them up. What I'm saying is that most great leaders can handle about 120 people themselves before they have to go out and start recruiting staff and things of that nature. So here's what I would say, Bishop, is that if Bishop Williams, if you would start implementing the things that you see, you can allow the new congregation that you're building to get your scent, to get your heart. That's one of the things that I am grateful for, is that when I was a church planter, until we got to about 125, even when we got past 125, because they had to really pull me out of it. You know, we were at like 250 people and I was still in the thick of everything. But it's because I knew that I only had one shot to set the foundation with the crew that we were reaching and where we were headed. And I had an apostolic mentality already, even though I didn't know what it meant. And so what I did is just really kind of keep on pushing it. And so what I would say to you, Bishop Williams, is to take what we give you along with the few leaders that you have right now and start implementing it, and allow your assistant to rise up out of the culture that you're going to build, right? Because when you start getting people who are the fruit of your evangelistic ministry, who are the fruit of what God is doing through you, they're going to come in with a different mindset, right? And if you've all been a part of a traditional church, you know this, right? And so I'm telling you, bring them on in, because I think it will make a huge difference. So that's what I would do. Pastor Russell, I think Bishop Witt would compliment and is a pastor that wants to introduce us to the pastor. Absolutely. That would be huge. That would be huge to have somebody like that with that mindset. Makes a huge difference. Pastor McCall says we went from 62 to 28, and I know they were hit really hard by COVID because we had spoken and we need help. And here's the reality. And I'm going to close our call with this because we've been on a little bit longer than I expected, but I hope it's been worth your time. One of the things I'll say is this, is that you really only got two choices, Pastor. Leaders, you only have two choices. One choice is that you can just keep doing what you're doing. You could just keep on coaching through this thing, hoping things will change and transform. The other option is you can take action and try something. Try something. And I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like. I'm telling you, I know what it feels like to be in that spot where you feel almost hopeless. I told y'all, man, and I know I'm impatient, but I told you I got to that point where I was like, man, look, I don't know if I could do this. But I had to try something different. I wasn't gonna die in what I was in. And I'm telling you, Pastor, you cannot die in what you're in. Try something different. Do something different. Do something that breaks the mold of what you've been doing and what you've always done. You might be pleasantly surprised to discover that your solution is in something you have not considered yet. Pastor Rush has been coming. I had we talked for a good while, maybe a couple of days ago. And one of the things that he talked about, which was a bit shocking to me, we were talking about the program. He said, well, one of the best things to me has just been the conversations we have stretches my thinking, and challenges my thinking in such a way that I just see stuff differently and see my situation differently. And I'm thinking, he's gonna say, well, man, this one thing or that one thing. But he said, no, it is the fact that having somebody else to wrestle through this stuff with is one of the things that made the biggest difference for me. And pastors, I'm telling you, that's one of the things that you need. Don't be isolated. We're bringing you into a community. When you get on that coaching call every week, there are other pastors, some who have been where you are. As a matter of fact, I'm in talks right now with some of our church systems boot camp pastors to serve as mentors who will literally walk alongside you down the road as we go forward. All right. So take that next step. All right. If you haven't already, you can click the link, getchurchsystems.com/CSB course. And you can come into the Institute to be a part of what God is doing so that we can help you take the next step. Listen, man, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you guys joining me. I love this platform, man. Did this platform work well for y'all? Let me know. I know some of y'all in the call, y'all are used to us using Zoom and stuff like that. But did this platform work well for y'all? I enjoyed it because it was really easy to engage with everybody in real time because the comments show up differently. So I could just throw everybody's comments on the screen. So that felt really cool. And so I've been thinking about using StreamYard more often. It's who I started with. And I've been thinking about coming back to it. So I've really been thinking about using this more, even for our coaching calls, because for those of you who want to come on screen, I literally can still just send you a link and say, hey, jump on real quick. Here you go, whatever it is. And you can come on screen with me still the same. But it's not as distracting if people's, not muted and all that kind of stuff like that. So I'm glad y'all were blessed. All right. Well, for all of you who said you were interested and you want to be a part, hey, look, go ahead and click that link. I've got some other things that I'm going to gift you as a bonus for joining today. I'm going to gift you with some other stuff that's really, really going to help you out. And I'm going to help you most of all on that coaching call. I'm going to jump on that coaching call and help you do it. All right. Listen, it is my prayer that you would see a Nehemiah transformation in your church as you begin to embrace the adjustments that lead towards flourishing. I'm praying for you that what others couldn't do in 60 years, you're going to do in 52 days. I'm praying that for you right now. What others couldn't do in 70 years, In 52 days, you're going to get it done because God is going to breathe on what you're doing. All right. Listen, love you. In just a moment, I'm going to text you all the link. All of you are probably going to get it so I can get it out quicker. I'll just send it to everybody who registered. But once you get that link, you click it, you sign up, and I will be ready to get started with you as soon as this coming week. All right. God bless. Love you. Hope you are blessed. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Until next time, keep the gears turning. God bless.